Anti-Semitism can be a little tricky to define, and part of the reason for that is that Jews are an ethno-religion, and other faiths, like for instance Lutheranism or uh, Baptism, different strands of Christianity or Islam, are generally faiths. And then you also have ethnicities, and so we see forms of racism against uh, Black Americans, against Asian Americans, et cetera, et cetera. But Judaism is unique because it's an ethno religion. And so there's actually many different forms of anti Semitism, including ethnic, religious, economic, political, and also cultural anti Semitism, and what's called new anti Semitism, which often relates to how people perceive or treat Jews based off of their opinions towards Israel. And there's many different components to what is anti-Semitism, but bottom line, anti-Semitism is a term that means hatred or bigotry or dislike against Jewish people and adherence to the Jewish faith. We saw people blame Jews for COVID. In a very prominent example that happened right here in Utah, um, a, uh, a prominent business leader, um, now former business leader, uh, sent out a mass email. He was anti-vaccine. Sent out a mass email saying that the COVID vaccine was invented by Jews, um, and that we were telling our community not to get vaccinated uh, because the COVID vaccine contained in it a sterilization medication, and that Jews created this to basically ethnically cleanse the non Jewish world, and that Jews were not taking it, but telling everybody else to take it. That was right here in Utah, and by a very prominent leader. And so, and by the way, of course, that's ridiculous. And I'll just put out there that not only am I vaccinated from against COVID, we required vaccines to come into the synagogue when we reopened, and American Jews by um, a significant margin, nearly 20%, were more likely to be vaccinated than any other religious group in America against COVID. Um, so those are just some of the examples that come to my mind.
So I actually did like a little project myself, and I threw in a few prompts into Chat GPT to try to see if Chat GPT could write a song. And what came out of it, like I would give it prompts and like kind of build upon it. So it was a little bit, it was like guided songwriting, but what came out of it was so lifeless, so bland, and I mean I don't think AI is ever going to be able to like create something that's meaningful artistically, because the whole point about art is that we're humans and we are creating this art to express what we feel. And I think with it being made by something that isn't human, it takes away a lot of the reason that we find it to be artful. Yeah, I mean making money off of streaming is never gonna happen. The margins are so low, and I think a lot of you know but that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it for the passion. We're doing it because we love it and we want to share it. But yeah, of course we want to, get paid, for it. That's the dream. But that's why good things like Bandcamp exist, because it is a way to directly support the artist. But I personally don't have issues with Spotify because I think Spotify has introduced me to music that otherwise I wouldn't have been able to ever hear in my life.
So the lawmakers, the representatives, will open a bill file and they'll submit a bill, and then it will go to the Rules Committee. And now, and in the past, some good gun laws have been just frozen in the Rules Committee. They never let it out of that committee. It never gets a vote. It never gets a hearing. It just sits there and languishes. Um, if it does get a hearing, then it goes to a small committee. It's like 8 to 10 people in either the House or the Senate, and there's a hearing. So someone will speak. The person who's supporting the bill will speak about that bill, about why they're putting it forward, and then they allow the public to speak for and against. And we are often in the room speaking either for good gun laws or against bad gun laws in that capacity in hearings. Because we have a supermajority, if it is a uh, a political issue, and guns in Utah are very much a political issue, it will often not make it out of that hearing. It will just be voted down on along party lines. Um, if it does pass through the hearing process, then it goes on to whichever house. So if it's a House committee, it goes on to the full House for a vote. And if it's this a Senate committee, it goes on to the full Senate. And then if it passes that, it reverts over to the other body, goes through the hearing process, goes through the full voting process, and then it has to be signed into law by the governor. Last year, they sent gun bills to natural resources, just FYI. So, yes. And the reason that they do that is they're cherry picking committees that have a lot of rural representatives. So they're cherry picking committees where the because they know that the people in rural Utah are very pro gun and will not give their representatives a hard time about this. Whereas along the Wasatch Front, more and more people are speaking out to their representatives and saying, hey, you know, I, I'm scared to send my kids to school. What are you doing about gun violence? And, when are the numbers going to start going down? Our representatives along the Wasatch Front up and down are hearing, and they don't want to be on those committees because they don't want to have to register a vote that they know the gun lobby is going to require them to register.
I would like to say that every company looks at it and says, you know what, we need to make a change. People aren't happy. But to be honest, I feel like nowadays it's more common for people to leave reviews because they know it'll solicit a response. It's just not the response they want. So I guess to answer your question, hopefully in the best way I can, I would say that companies see it, but their goal is in many cases, how do we get rid of it? Not how do we procedurally address this in the future to ensure it does not happen again. So I think for some companies they have a legitimate customer focused mentality and they say, you know what, this is a problem, we do need to fix it. But there are other companies that basically just say, where's the rug and how do we put it over whatever this problem is? So a lot of people know it'll solicit a response from a CEO or a hiring manager, but it's ultimately probably not going to get that person what they want. Honestly, I've seen a wide range of different solutions. So I think one of the things a lot of people don't realize is how jobs, to answer your question, how jobs can be filled when they didn't get selected. So if I apply, it could be that 100 other applicants also applied and they simply found someone who's better. Could also be that the budget was canceled and so that job is no longer hiring, which I've seen. And it could be that the company is required to post the job online, but they had someone else in mind, but they're required to post it online before they can hire someone from within their organization, which some companies are required to adopt. And the last thing is they don't. There are companies that will post jobs online with no intention of hiring for them. They just want to see what the market has. It's a legitimate thing I don't like, but it is something that companies do more often than people would think. So if you look up all of these companies that have all of these jobs and then look at the fill rates for them, there's not going to be a one to one match. So I think that's also something people should think about.
So, there are different places in California where you still can find houses. But what I can tell you that in most of the places where, where people want to live, the market is really hot, the inventory is short, and that is causing still people to have to offer more than the house is being offered in the market. And that's how the market is here in the area where I am. And honestly, people want houses, want prices to go down. We as realtors and brokers want also that to happen, but I don't see it. I don't see it yet. It could happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow, but I don't see it coming, because even though rates are high and prices are high, people are still going out and willing to offer more for the houses that are in the market. We've seen increases, like you mentioned, over 10% from last compared to last year, and I think that's crazy. It is crazy, and I don't know if there's going to be a point where that's going to have an effect, and prices will probably start dropping, but I don't see it in the next 6 months. I don't see it. Honestly, I never believe anything I see in the internet, like Abraham Lincoln said. uh, Someone said, don't believe everything you see in the internet, and they have the Lincoln picture. So yeah, when I read something, I'm like, okay, let me check. Never believe anything. Go and check. Now, talk to your local realtor. Usually, we know what's happening. We're supposed to be truthful to people. I know that doesn't apply 100%, but most of the realtors and brokers, are professionals, and do tell the truth to people. One of the things I tell people, hey, what are you gonna find here with me? Is honesty 100%. If I need to tell you something that you need to know, even if that means that you're going to cancel the transaction, I have to tell you. I have That's why you trust me, because you hire me, because you trust that I'm gonna be honest and truthful to you, and that's exactly what I have to do.
I was at a tabling event this weekend in Utah County, and I was talking to a gentleman who is a gun owner, and he said I'm for arming teachers in schools, and I said, well, you know that most teachers are not for arming teachers in school, and we got into a discussion about that, but it sounds like a good thing especially to a gun owner, right? Well, we'll just arm the teachers. But teachers, uh, if you know teachers, and I know a lot of teachers, they have their hands full. They don't need to be the school cop in addition to all the things that we already ask them to do. I mean, it's really, and it's not just the school cop either, because like I said, the level of training that you need to respond effectively in an active shooter situation, it's not a once a year training, and it's maybe not even a once a month training. You talk to police officers, and I do talk to police officers about this. Those people are highly trained and regularly trained. And you're going to ask a teacher, in addition to grading papers and behavior management and everything else, student well being, you're going to ask them to do that too. It just does not. I know it sounds easy, but it just does not. It's not. It's not easy, and I don't think it's right, and most teachers don't think it's right either. I talk to people all the time, and I hear that obviously from gun owners and adamant gun rights people, that the government is going to come and take our guns away. And I say, do you know anybody who has had their gun taken away without cause? Now, we don't allow felons to have guns. We don't allow domestic violence abusers to have guns. There's certain categories that of people that are not allowed. Mentally ill, if you have a certified mental illness, you're not allowed to have a gun. So that is people who with cause are not allowed to have guns because it keeps the rest of us safe. Okay. um, and they never can come back and say, yeah, I know somebody who's had their gun taken away. Nobody. So that again is a fear tactic used by the gun lobby, and it encourages gun owners to go out and stockpile more guns. And guess what? Cha-ching! Meanwhile, the gun industry is selling guns, which is that's the business they're in. Those guns are not consumable. They're not going away. They're just getting, we're just getting more and more guns.
When it comes to developing these particular skills, the most crucial skills to develop, especially in fields like journalism, fields like psychotherapy, are experiences that are difficult, interpersonally difficult, practically difficult. That having these crucial conversations to be able to manage oneself first is the key ingredient in having a hard conversation and enduring a hard process at work with other people. What university faculty are actively pushed against is doing that. In all our teachings now and all our trainings now, because we're part of the oppressor class, is we are not to have these hard conversations with students. Okay? And so therefore, we do not ruffle any feathers. We do not challenge any ideologies. We do not give people negative feedback that, hey, you do not have this sort of soft skill that is going to be vital for your future success. We're actively oppressed from doing that. Speaking of the discourse of oppressor and oppressed, that we are actively prevented from doing that. And when we do and students complain, we faculty get in trouble. So a couple years before I retired from teaching, no, it was a year before I retired from teaching. I come in, I sit down, I open up my email, and I have this red letter, literally red font, capital letters. Your therapy practice is a conflict of interest with your university contract. Very threatening email. So I send an email back and I say, if you will look at my contract with the university, it specifies that as practical technical faculty, I am required to maintain a practice and an active license, and that actually counts for my university job. There are three parts of a university job: teaching, research, and service. And this was to count as service to the community and was an assigned part of my teaching job. I get another nasty red letter email back that says, it doesn't matter what your contract says, we've decided it is in violation. And I go, how could my contract with the university be in violation with my contract to the university? That does not sound like a me problem. That sounds like a you problem. And so they're trying to get me to cease and desist the technical practice of my field that I actively use in my teaching as somebody who is in the therapy clinic every week, who goes to new trainings, who develops new skills, and who passes those on to students. And the university comes and says, that's a conflict of interest. You are to cease and desist immediately. So universities are cutting their own throats. Universities are the ones further insulating faculty from actually working in their field and threatening their university jobs if they dare to get their hands dirty actually doing real work. So, number one, we're not allowed to actually teach and train students because part of functioning well in the world is being able to handle difficult things, especially interpersonal things. And number two, faculty are getting pushed against who actually dare or deign to get their hands dirty in the real world. They are told that they cannot and that it is a conflict of interest.
The cost of treatments are rising. The cost of pharmaceuticals, that is your drugs that your average person consumes, they're getting more expensive. There are shortages for nurses, for doctors, and so that's also putting pressure on costs, because when there are fewer doctors and nurses and technicians, you have to pay them more. And in general, just the cost of research, the cost of everything has gotten more expensive. And this isn't a recent phenomenon, unlike economic inflation that we've been facing since 2022. This has been a problem since the year 2000, and it's such a complex situation that there really isn't like a single solution or a silver bullet, is if you want to call it, that we can use to address this. I hesitate to draw the line between denials and rising overall healthcare costs, except to say that with healthcare becoming more expensive on a whole, insurance companies will try to see how they can reduce their expenses. And the ways they're going about it might not be very clear to us as consumers, because they don't always tell you how they're looking at claims or denying them or approving them. And it's easy to paint someone as a villain, especially when you're in a tight situation and you need care. However, I just want to point out that if your claim is denied, that isn't the final step. You can appeal your claim. You can reach out to insurance regulators in your area to ask for help, and as you rightly pointed out, reach out to the media. So there are lots of people who can advocate for you if you find yourself in a situation where your care is being denied, or your claim is being denied. It might be a simple error that can be fixed. It's this entire claims process is a negotiation, so it's always important to not take the first response and advocate for yourself. Reach out, talk to your health insurance company. If you that's something you don't have the time to do, appoint someone for it, a family member or a healthcare advocate. Every hospital has one. Reach out to them and see how they can negotiate for you. Your doctors will do it for you. A lot of them write great letters letting insurance companies know why this care is critical. um, just don't take the first claim denial as final. You can negotiate it, and you can probably find a compromise.